What is up, people of the internet? Welcome back. I know this is a midweek episode, but it's a bonus episode, and it's another long-form episode. Do the air horns. That's right. That's right. We all love a long-form episode. Anyway, we're back. We will have our regular scheduled programming at the end of the week, as usual. But just wanted to peek in this little bonus episode for you guys. So, you guys excited?
I'm very excited.
Very excited.
It's been a minute since we did the last one.
Thanksgiving right now. Thankful for a long form episode.
Oh yeah, there we go. I'm always thankful for a long form episode.
Always.
So to spice up this episode, there is trivia throughout. Yeah, you never know when you might hear this sound.
Okay. I think that's the trivia sound?
That's the trivia sound, just like throughout the episode.
Okay.
It'll be happening throughout the story. Okay. Anytime that David mentions something, I might just play this. And there will be a trivia question that you guys have to answer.
Okay.
You will win something at the end.
Oh, this is not going towards our regular trivia points.
No, because then David wouldn't get it. Yeah, there's just for this episode.
That was my chance to catch up.
Yeah, there is.
You're not that far behind.
You will win something. But to spice it up a little bit, you guys are both starting with 20 points.
Okay.
And every time you hear, once again, this sound, you can bet
wager?
points.
Wager.
You can wager points based on how confident you are about what was just being discussed.
We hear the question.
We hear what's being discussed, we wager, and then we hear the actual question of it?
Exactly.
Cool.
I'm pushing all in every time.
I'm pushing 0 every time.
So David's talking. He's telling a story, and then all of a sudden, and you guys place your bets. David asks a question, and there we go.
This is going to be like in school when the teacher calls and you're like, I just zoned out for the last 5 minutes. Exactly. Okay, I'm going to be laser focused now. Yeah,
lasered in.
You got to snap at me if you see me drifting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're just going to get right into it. And as usual, in the way that we get into these things, we got to start with a lot of context.
History lesson.
That's right. Okay. So we're diving back pretty far into the past. To start it off, do you guys know the website XDA Developers?
Of course.
I do.
Yeah.
Of course.
What would you say XDA Developers is?
Man. I mean, that's kind of like the OG forums of, I associate it with Android. So forums for developers, software, ROMs, tweaking phones, all these types of fun things. I was much more in XDA back in, I want to say like the 2009 to 2015 sort of years.
Yeah. So that era between Android being birthed and now.
And being what it is today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's right. XDA currently, and was before, a very big ROMming site. For those who don't know what it means, what ROMming means, it's a website where you can go and you can take your devices that you're using on a day-to-day basis and dive really deep into modifying the software for those devices, right? ROMming is kind of a weird term, right? Because
ROM stands for read-only memory, and you're installing a custom ROM. You're not like installing custom read-only memory onto your device. It doesn't really make sense. But it's just basically a term that came about because people are installing modified software onto the not actually read-only memory parts of their device, but it's just kind of a thing that came about because they were installing things to a place where you're not meant to modify the software, the storage.
That's Mashal Rahman. He wrote for XDA for a very long period of time, and he's kind of known as the guy around the internet who digs into Android code and finds all the new features and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. You guys probably have met him before, right?
I don't know if I've met him, but I've definitely seen that work. Yeah. Where every time there's a new version of Android code that drops, somebody's gone through the code and found the newest references to things, and it becomes an article for every feature.
Yeah.
I'm into that.
Yeah.
I feel like I know XDA much more nowadays as the website that people like him post the real nitty gritty of things. And I'm sure we've talked about stuff he's written dozens of times.
Definitely. He does really deep dives into Android stuff. Do you guys actually know what XDA and XDA Developers is supposed to refer to?
Oh, this feels like a trivia question.
I was waiting for the sound. Is it really?
No, it's not true.
Oh, okay.
Does D stand for developer? No, because that would be two
no.
developers twice. Yeah, I don't know. What does it stand for?
Does X stand for xylophone?
No.
That's all I got.
Do you have any guesses or no?
I have 0 guesses.
Okay. So XDA is actually relating to the O2 XDA. O2 is a telecommunications carrier in Europe, and they had these like PDAs that they called XDAs because they were like extra or cool. I don't know.
Okay.
You sub out anything with X and it just sounds a lot cooler.
Okay, so
course,
XDA was PDA, but with an X.
Yeah, PDA but with an X.
Okay.
Yeah. It was very much like an early form of the smartphone. Like we don't necessarily consider those devices smartphones. They were PDAs, even though personally, I think that we should call smartphones now PDAs because they are personal digital assistants more than they are just smart versions of phones.
Yeah, that's funny because now the phone part is the least
used part.
Least used, yeah.
Yeah. So these people want to mess around with these XDA phones, right? They were these early PDAs that were a lot different from modern smartphones, mostly because they were like really closed down. They all ran Windows Mobile and it wasn't very modifiable. So these people wanted to modify them. So they're just like tweaking and trying to get performance benefits out of it. And this group kind of comes together to start sharing all of these tweaked kernels and ROMs that they're making, right?
Speaking of which,
All right, Adam, play the music. Trivia question number 1. In 2003, this group of XDA developers started tweaking around with their XDA phones, adding features and all this stuff. What European city was this happening in? A, London. B, Barcelona. C, Oslo. Or D, Amsterdam.
I guess I would like to wager 5 of my points.
I would like to wager. Do I get to hear the question again? Because I already
If you
forgot
like,
all the
yeah,
answers. Okay.
yeah.
I'll wager 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we pointing to the camera?
all right, flip him and read. What do you got?
I said Oslo.
I said Barcelona.
Bam, bam.
To both.
Dang it.
The answer was D, Amsterdam.
Oh.
All right.
So now you both have 15 points.
Okay.
All these little XDA developers get together in Amsterdam and they're modifying their Windows Mobile PDAs, which they call XDAs. And they figure we can't be the only ones that want to do this, right? There's got to be a lot of people. There's a lot of nerds on the planet that have these PDAs, and they're probably also modifying them, and none of us are talking to each other, right? It's almost like the Secret History of the Internet episode where everyone realized they could be talking to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like learning more because one, everyone's doing separate things and getting to there. If
Right.
you can skip the first 5 steps.
Exactly.
Because someone's done it already.
You could share information.
Yeah.
So they decided to launch this website called XDA Developers, a site to mess with software and all this stuff. This ended up being a huge hit really fast. They grew to 100,000 members in 3 years, which is wild.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, this is just the O2 XDA phones.
Wow.
One carrier, one type of like
yeah.
PDA, and they get to 100,000 people that want to tweak their devices in 3 years.
That's actually kind of incredible.
Right?
And back in the day, too, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's between 2003 and 2006.
Okay.
Sheesh.
Yeah, which is wild. Now, all of these XDA devices were made by one company. This company called High Tech Computer Corporation.
That's a horrible name.
Is it?
High tech computer.
They should rename it.
I mean, maybe it is a good name. It's just very literal.
Maybe they should like shorten it.
What's the acronym for that?
Maybe like high tech. Wait, hold on. Let me
High-tech-
try.
what was it?
High tech
Oh.
computer.
HTC, baby!
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, so they shorten it.
Is that what that means?
High Tech Computer Corporation.
HTC's way better. Without ever pretending that that's what it meant.
Yeah. For the nerds out there, HTC doesn't really make phones anymore, but they have made some of the best smartphones of the era. So, yeah, really, really old school HTC stuff being made back then.
Yep.
This kind of showed the scale at which people wanted to modify their devices, right? There's this quote from Bill Joy, who is the co-founder of Sun Microsystems, that all the smartest people don't work for us. They work for somebody else. And XDA kind of showed that was the case, right? Because they were launching these, XDA developers showed that was the case because they were launching these XDA PDAs and these people were just adding all these features on top and they were just like making them run faster and they were making them do this. And it's like, why couldn't the company just do that? Because they don't have all the smartest people who are the most excited. In the background of all this, in the background radiation of Silicon Valley, there's a man named Rich Miner. He's working at Orange Ventures. And if you don't know, Orange is another telecom company in Europe, similar to like Verizon or AT&T. And Rich's company at the time was called Wildfire Communications. It was this very early form of basically Siri. Yeah.
Oh.
Do you know about this company? You
Wait.
seem like you know about this company.
This might be a total coincidence, but there was a phone called the
The HTC Wildfire.
Does that have anything to do with this?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh. That's the only reason it
total coincidence.
sounded familiar.
I doubt it.
Wildfire. Okay.
I doubt it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like crazy enough, the Wildfire ended up being what a lot of people consider like the godfather of Siri. It was a very early digital assistant from 1994, voice-based assistant.
Oh.
94, which is crazy.
Siri's had that long and still sucks this fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, David, not to interrupt you, but I can come in with a confirmation that the HTC Wildfire is not named after Wildfire Communications, but in the most 2011 turn of events ever, it was named by a Facebook poll.
Oof.
2011, man. What a time.
What a time. So Rich sells Wildfire Communications to Orange, and he became an Orange employee. And they bought it because they wanted to offer this personal digital assistant, voice assistant, to their subscribers. Little fun fact, they shut it down in a couple of years because no one was using it.
Okay.
But because he was acquired by Orange, he became this Orange employee, and he quickly joined the Orange Ventures team. And a lot of these big corporations have these venture arms that just allow them to like invest in other companies that would be good for the company, right? And over the next couple of years, all of the sort of like smart PDA phones that are coming out are Windows mobile phones. And Windows mobile phones, and Windows mobile phones.
Somebody's got to do something about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just got a little worried when we were doing that because I felt like, boy, if Microsoft owns the mobile phone space, we're going to repeat some of the things that we saw in the laptop space where there's one word processor, one spreadsheet. Like it felt like we might not have an innovative platform if the platform is tight controlled. And so,
that's Rich Miner. We got him on the phone for this story. Now, because Rich is working at Orange Ventures, he has the opportunity to invest in some companies for Orange, right? Because he kept seeing these Windows mobile devices pop up over and over and over again. He starts to get really interested in like device diversity of operating systems because he just didn't want the same thing that happened in personal computing where everything got consolidated to like, you've got IBM and you've got Apple and Windows releases Windows and you can only use one application. Like it's just not a good time, right? So he's like, okay, if these PDAs are like early smartphones are growing out, we need to make sure that there's a lot of competition. I don't just want to see 2.0 of the same thing. So he's at Orange Ventures, and he gets interested in projects like Sava.je. I think it's supposed to be pronounced Savage, but it's an early like Java based OS for devices like this. Basically, any OS that could create richer mobile experiences that were already available. And one of the companies that really caught his interest was this company called Danger, who made a device called the Danger Hip Top, also known as.
How much do you guys want to wager?
Danger Hip Top?
Yeah, the Danger Hip Top. What was the other more popular name for that device?
You guys both have 15 points.
I'll wager 2 points.
Yeah, you gotta start wagering lower.
Yeah, I'm wagering 1 point.
1 point.
All right.
All right.
You ready?
What do you think it is?
Danger, say it again?
Danger Hip Top.
What do I think it is?
The more common name for the Danger Hip Top.
Pretty sure this was already a trivia question.
Is it really? I don't even know what to write.
All right.
All right,
And
flip them and read. Laptop
I just wrote laptop.
and beeper.
Nope.
No. This is a device by a company called Danger, right? So it was also called the Sidekick, the T-Mobile Sidekick,
That was called the Hip Top?
the Hip Top.
I knew that.
T-Mobile Sidekick 2 with phone, web, IM, and more.
So Danger seemed like a cool and smart choice to fund because they were doing something really new and cool, right? Like everyone really liked the Sidekick. Do you guys ever use a Sidekick?
I just saw them on TV all the time and I wanted one
They
so
did
bad.
pop off. Weren't they like a T-Mobile exclusive or something?
Yeah, the T-Mobile
think
Sidekick.
so.
I never owned a Sidekick, but I did get to try them and play with them in the little
Yeah.
satisfying flip over.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah.
There were multiple generations of them. There's a really awesome Mr. Mobile When Phones Were Fun retrospective on the
Yeah.
Sidekick, and Sidekick 1 through like 4, which is really dope. You should watch that. Anyway, Rich decided he's going to invest in Danger through Orange Ventures, and he's working pretty closely with them because around that time, one of the guys that was running Danger was named Andy Rubin.
Heard of it?
Yeah. They had been building this OS for the Danger Hip Top or T-Mobile Sidekick because it had its own OS, this Danger OS, and it was cool. And the OS for the Sidekick was pretty innovative. Like, it was very different from all the like Windows mobile offerings at the time, you know? And so Danger decided, Andy at Danger was like, I kind of want to make another OS. And I don't know, it's probably one of those things where like you make one, you just want to make something else. You want to do it again and again and again, right? And so what was the OS that Andy was originally going to make supposed to be made for type of device?
Marquez, you have 13. Andrew, you got 14.
What was it supposed to be made for? I know this.
How much do you guys want to wager?
2 points.
2 points? That's it? You really don't remember?
No.
I do. If this was multiple choice, I would get this. Oh man, I have to go 1 point because I don't know it right now.
Remember, it's Andy Rubin.
Yeah.
You know Andy Rubin.
Yeah,
Right.
Andy Rubin.
Yeah, okay.
Andy, aka Android Rubin.
Yeah.
Andy Rubin's the guy that produced the Beastie Boys.
What was it? What was Android for?
Time's running down. No pressure.
Android was gonna be.
I know I'm wrong because he's thinking so hard, and I'm guessing something very like what feels obvious.
Time. Flip him and read.
Flip him and
I'm gonna
read.
hate hearing this out loud. I know it.
I just wrote tablet.
Did you write airplane?
I wrote appliance.
Oh.
I just don't remember.
I hope it's on airplane.
What was it?
Okay. So we got this Rich Miner quote.
So Andy had this kind of idea of OSs for mobile devices. He actually started thinking about an OS for camera.
He originally started thinking about making this OS for a camera.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And then he was like,
Oh, no, it should be about the phone. And I agreed, yes, we need an open OS for the phone. So I'd invested in Danger as a part of the venture fund I'd started at Orange, talked to Andy about what he was doing with Android, and had my thesis about why I thought we needed, and carriers needed, and OEMs needed an open mobile phone OS as opposed to a tightly controlled mobile phone OS like we might get with Nokia, like you might get with Microsoft.
Rich was like, yes, we definitely need an OS for phones, right? This is kind of an aside, but do you guys realize how much it sucked to be a developer back in the like PDA feature phone days?
An OS developer or an app developer?
An app developer.
No.
You couldn't just like upload your app to an open marketplace. You had to like go to individual carriers because a lot of carriers had phones that only came out on that carrier, like the O2 XDA or the T-Mobile Sidekick.
So you had to make carrier
So you had to go to
deals?
T-Mobile and you had to say, hey, we're building this app that does this thing. Do you think you could maybe put it on the T-Mobile Sidekick?
Can we be bloatware, please?
Yeah. And then T-Mobile, it would basically be bloatware. And then T-Mobile would be like, well, what's in it for us?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it sucks.
There's like no way to like, how are you going to be incentivized to build apps if that's the process that you have to go through? That's awful. So Rich and Andy are sort of also thinking about like, how do we like encourage development here? Because it sucks to have the carriers have all of the control. We really need to push this through. So Rich gets really hyped about Android because he's like, yeah, open OS. We should make an open OS. We should make this OS that doesn't just like, you don't build this OS for this particular phone that goes on a particular carrier. You build an OS that can be used on multiple things so that you don't just have HTC phones or you don't just have Danger phones, you know? You can just make it for everything and everyone can just build their own apps and it all works and it's open source and all this stuff. And so he gets hyped about this. He joins the Android team as a co-founder and they start getting to work on Android for the next 2 years or so. In 2005, they're out trying to raise money for the company because they have to make money. So they're looking for their Series A. And for those that don't know, when you're a startup, you can go around and get different rounds or series of funding. It's basically like, we're building this thing. Do you want to invest? Like, if you invest, it basically keeps us around because we have to pay our employees, all this stuff. So Andy and Rich aren't actually looking for Android to get like acquired. They just thought that it would be really dope to have this open OS so they could go to HTC and they could go to Samsung and they could go to LG and Motorola and be like, you guys should use our OS and you can like pay us to use it, licensing fees and stuff. But Android, the company, the OS maker, is a separate corporation. They didn't really want to like be acquired. They just wanted to raise funding. Yeah. And they ended up going to Google to kind of see like, you know, if they could have a Google phone that used the Android OS, that would be pretty dope for their pitch deck, because Google was already a huge company at this point in time, and they could go around and it would be a lot easier for like them to get Samsung or HTC or Motorola interested. And we actually found this YouTube video on the internet where Rich says,
and as we went out and started to pitch, we happened to be at Google.
Google was already funding the Mozilla open source project at that point in time. It was kind of this thing where like a lot of the companies were funding these open source projects because they didn't want like Microsoft or any of these other giant tech corporations to have all the ownership and stuff. Because if you fund open source, then there's a lot more competition and it's not all consolidated, right? So Google had been going around and already trying to like help open source kind of get underway. So Google was like, yeah, no, you need some help with that. We're gonna buy you. So things start moving really fast after that. Remember, this is still 2005, and Andy and Rich on the team are building the thing. There's actually a really great book by Chet Haas, I recommend, called Android's the Team That Built the Android Operating System, that kind of details like the early years of them building this. But then, 2 years later, it's 2007. Do you guys remember what happened in 2007?
I do.
Do you want to wager that?
Oh, just name something that happened.
Just name anything that happens in 2007.
I'll wager all my
What
points.
was the biggest thing that happened in tech in 2007?
I'll wager everything I got.
Marquez, you have 12, so you're wagering it all.
I'm wagering 12.
Andrew, you also have 12. How much are you wagering?
Oh, 12.
All right.
Wait,
They're going deep in.
you got it?
You're going all for it.
They're all in.
They're all in. Let's see.
It would be a shame if I'm wrong, because I don't have any points left. If I'm wrong.
Yeah, what happens if we're both at 0?
I'll have to rethink the game on the spot.
Buy back in. I'll buy back in.
All right. You ready?
All right.
Flip them and
Flip 'em and
read,
read.
boys.
Oh, thank goodness.
iPhone.
The iPhone.
That's right,
2007.
boys.
An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
It's funny because when you
A
were talking
widescreen
about
iPod.
this before as like,
A revolutionary.
how can we get more things developing for it or this market, I was like, wait, but we're getting pretty close to like the iPhone also.
Yeah.
Where does that come in?
Yeah, right. So the iPhone gets launched, and Google's like in the background, they're developing Android. They had been developing Android for 2 years, but yeah, so it was already like in process. And they're like, okay, we need to turn up the heat because Apple just launched this major thing. And so the public beta of Android 1.0 launched on November 5th, 2007, which was like immediately after
A couple months later.
a couple months later,
Yeah.
because they were like, it doesn't matter that it's not done yet. We just need to put out a beta for it so that people start developing for it, because we need to get this in the hands of people, and it needs to have an app store and all this stuff.
Very googly thing to do.
Yeah, and yeah,
Send it.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually kind of
Their
what,
motto in 2007. Yeah.
It's kind of what Apple is now doing with the Vision Pro.
It's kind
right?
of what Google's doing with Bard.
Or what Microsoft's doing with
Well, you
ChatGPT.
don't really build on top of Bard though.
I guess the whole, it's kind of happening right now. We need to send it.
Oh, yeah,
That moment.
yeah,
Google,
yeah,
you
true,
know?
true.
But yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, the Vision Pro thing is like, this isn't out yet, but we need apps when it is out, so please develop now.
Right.
Right. That's kind of what Google was doing, because they didn't even have a device. There was no Android phone.
Yeah.
You just had to do it on a computer.
Yeah. Wow.
You know? So that launched on November 5th, 2007, and the first official Android phone launched in September 2008. And what was that phone?
Everything I got.
I'm just 4.
Andrew, I hear 24 points. You're risking it all.
4.
I'm risking
down for 24.
20 of my 24.
There are 2 common names for this device, and I will accept both.
I'm gonna be mad if this is right, but I think it's wrong. I think I'm missing something beforehand.
Interesting. Okay.
And I know Marquez has it right.
Flip them and read. Marquez says HTC/T-Mobile G1. Correct.
And I said the HTC Aris.
No. But that's okay.
They really gave that phone both a trackball and a keyboard.
I had the Aris.
Full send.
The
Or
G1.
the G1.
That's the full
It
send.
had a trackball
Yeah, the
too.
trackball,
It
yeah.
had a trackball and it had a slot out, not a slide, but a slot out screen.
Yeah.
It was a weird mechanism.
It was
Yeah.
awesome.
It was a hinge.
It was pretty sick.
Yeah, it was cool.
I wanted one so bad.
So Android's officially out and on a phone in September 2008, just a year after the iPhone launches, even though it had been developed in the background since 2005. Actually, kind of since 2003. Now, I want to flip it back to XDA for a second. Keep in mind that they were founded specifically as a Windows mobile modding blog for the O2 XDA and the O2 XDA only, which is wild. But there was writing on the wall, right? Like Microsoft is kind of the last company that wants you to modify their OS anyway. So it was very difficult to have modify these O2 phones. And then this new OS comes out from Google, of all companies, which is a huge tech company, that is kind of founded on being open sourced and modified. Like everyone on XDA wants to just move to that, right? That makes a lot of sense. So I found a couple of different sources for this, but there's a blog post from XDA developers from 10 years ago called The History of XDA Developers, which is funny considering it's from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it says that it took until 2009, the next year, for XDA to realize that they should be allowing Android phones on the forums because it was originally just for Windows mobile phones. But if you look back, there were people developing for the HTC Dream T-Mobile G1 like pretty much immediately after it came out.
I forgot it was called the Dream also.
HTC Dream, baby. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, as soon as that comes out, it just starts buzzing. Like the Android development is going. And there's kind of this idea that like they had to rush it out because of the iPhone anyway, so it was kind of unfinished, you know? So all these developers get their G1s and they're just like, we can modify this. We can make it amazing.
And we're allowed to.
Yeah, we're allowed to do it.
Encouraged even.
Yeah. No, I mean, Android was awesome, right? Like the iPhone, when it first came out, was really expensive. It didn't have an app store. It was super locked down. And then you have this other option where you were encouraged to modify your device.
Yeah.
There was this awesome like launch phone that came out that everyone was buying. It was super cool.
For perspective, the modifying in the iPhone software was called jailbreaking.
Yeah.
That's how locked up it was.
Yeah.
It was pretty locked up.
Yeah, jailbreak. Yeah. And all of a sudden, all of these ROMs start getting put on XDA, right? Because when you take Android and you start modifying it yourself, you can call that your own ROM. You know, you're making it look the way you want. You're adding the features that you want. It's not like all these people on XDA are like working on one project. They're working on a bunch of different projects. So there's all of these different ROMs coming out. There's slim ROMs. There's paranoid Android. There's dirty unicorns.
I use both of them.
That's right. That's right.
Those are some throwbacks.
There's
man.
throwbacks. I know.
Yeah.
And people are just flashing stuff every single day.
Yeah.
Right? Like that. And keep in mind, when you flash a new ROM to your phone, it completely wipes your phone of all apps and all memory and all photos and all data.
This was the time that I got really good at setting up new phones. Because I was flashing new ROMs and new updates. Like every time there was a new dot version update of like paranoid Android, I'd flash a new kernel, new ROM like every couple days.
Yeah. And
totally wipe everything.
There were some ROMs that were bigger that had teams that were working on them that would do nightlies.
Yep.
So they would add new features every single night.
CyanogenMod
and in the morning, you would wake up and you would flash your phone and it would wipe all of your data.
And you'd have some slight performance boosts.
Yeah.
And it'd be awesome.
It was awesome. It was sick.
Yeah.
But there was one ROM that would kind of change the way that we thought about Android ROMming overall. And the drama that would unfold because of this ROM in the tech world was legendary. I love this drama. This drama is epic. But we'll get to it after the break. Welcome back to continue our story, it's 2008. The HTC Dream T-Mobile G1 just came out. And in November of 2008, which again is like immediately after the T-Mobile G1 come out, this username Jesus Freak emerged on XDA.
Nice.
But Freak is spelled Freke, which do you know what that means?
No. Oh.
What is freaking? What does freaking mean?
What is freaking?
But our Freke.
How much do you guys want to wager?
I'll wager 4 points.
I will wager 1 point.
Flashing a ROM?
No.
Okay.
Mine's so vague that it's probably not right.
You're probably
either.
right.
I wrote modding.
No.
Okay.
No?
Okay.
He was ready to say no.
So phone freaking is something that people used to do with payphones, where they would play sounds into the payphone, which would allow them to make free phone calls.
Because each number is a specific tone.
Is a tone,
right?
is a dial
and all
tone.
it is it's
and you
listening
didn't
for
have
that
to
tone.
pay. You didn't have to pay for the phone if you were able to play the right sounds into the phone.
Because all that's happening on a payphone is you're picking it up and it's listening. And when you dial those
You would
numbers,
turn the speaker on.
Andrew, that's how any dialing of a phone works.
Really?
Yeah, like it's using the actual
like
so-
my smartphone right now.
Ellis's quick audio lesson. Ba-da-boop, ba-ba-doop, boop, boop.
Is
On
that
a-
dope? Yeah.
On a 9-button phone, or I guess there's 12 buttons.
Yeah.
The rows are all one tone, and the columns are all one tone. So it's actually each button is playing 2 tones in harmony, decided by the coordinates. The frequency interaction between those tones is picked up at the other end, and it is connected to a logic board that puts it
Yeah.
all together. It's all sonic. So
It's called-
you can dial a phone just by putting a speaker up to a phone
And playing the tone.
No way.
This is only like landline phones,
Only
correct? Okay.
landline,
Because I think a lot of people listening right now, phone means very different.
What's
Yeah,
a landline?
There are some people alive who think they can do this on their smartphone. That's not what we're talking about. But I literally have never. I can't believe I've never heard.
They used to make these little devices, and could go up to a payphone and like call someone by just playing into
That
the
seems
payphone
too
for
easy.
free.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was epic.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah, Jesus Freak, which was a fun little play on words.
Unreal.
Yeah. So this user emerged on XDA as the maintainer of the most popular Android ROM at the time. And again, the HTC Dream came out in October of 2008. He was the most popular one on XDA by November of 2008. So he spent all of his time just immediately going and ROMming this phone, right?
And this is people just in their free time. It's not like a full-time job.
This is just because you wanted to. There's you're not getting paid to mod on XDA.
Yeah.
Right. He's got this quote. He basically says that he pre-ordered his G1, so he was one of the first people to get one, and he sort of had to play this cat and mouse game because there was this infamous root bug that didn't allow him to have root access. So he had to try to figure out how to patch that bug to give him root access, and then he got root access, and then they updated it, and it took away root access, so he just starts basically going back and forth. But he had this awesome ROM out called JFROM that everyone just started using for the G1. By the way, root on your phone means that you have access to the root directory, which is this primary folder where like everything is stored from. And the reason that you usually don't have root access on a device is because it's like if you delete System 32 on your computer, it's like the primary folder that everything else branches from.
You could break everything with
You
root
could
access.
just break everything with root access. So yeah.
Which we've all done from time to time.
Yeah. And then in May 2009, Jesus Freak was hacking away making JFROM, and this user named Cyanogen made their first blog post on XDA with the title CyanogenMod, optimizing the crap out of Android 1.5 Release 2. And effectively, they were just making a bunch of modifications to Jesus Freak's ROM and enhancing it. They were forking the ROM.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they didn't fork Android, they forked Jesus Freak's ROM.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's why it's called Android, right? They've got Android open source project, JFROM, another fork, CyanogenMod.
Got it.
So the user's name was Cyanogen, and their ROM was called CyanogenMod.
It's just like, what I found is this huge project that has all these cool things that you can hack on, and, it's open source, and with a little bit of work, you could build it for this phone and actually like run it and use it every day.
So that's Stephanie Kondik, aka the Cyanogen. We were finally able to get in touch with her for this episode. It was very hard to track her down. But thanks to Shen for getting us in contact.
Wow. Shout out to Shen.
Yeah, if you don't know who Shen is, he works at HTC on Vive, and he seems to know literally everyone.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Been on the show before also.
Been on the
He did
show
a good
before.
Yeah.
He's a really awesome guy. He knows everyone. That is Shen right there. If audio
Friend of the
listeners,
show.
we have a giant cardboard cutout of Shen. But a quick trivia question. What was Shen's first job?
How much do you guys want to wager?
Are you saying like first job ever?
First
Are we
job,
supposed to know what Shen's first job was?
First job on his LinkedIn.
On his LinkedIn.
Dog walker.
I have no idea.
Do you guys want a hint?
I would.
He's told
Are we
me
wagering
he's-
after that?
Sure.
Sure.
Do they have to wager for
Yeah.
this? This is really hard.
Hint sounds great.
Yeah.
He's
say the hint.
told me before.
Oh,
We've been talking about it on and off this entire time.
yeah.
Okay, I'll go with what I was going to guess then.
Okay.
I'll
Ready?
wager 2 points.
2 points. Andrew?
I'll wager 2 points.
You know
Making this
you're
super
like
interesting.
Marquez has
You know,
40
you're-
and Andrew has 19. I just want to say.
Carry the One has 19 and Marquez has 40.
That's
Furiously
That's so innocent.
writing.
I don't think mine. I'm wrong, but I want it to be right.
I really want to know what you wrote now.
All right. You ready? Flip them and read,
All right,
boys.
flip him and read.
You were a moderator.
XDA moderator, XDA developer, reporter.
I'll do both.
Yeah. He was the XDA TV producer from.
Oh, what?
Yeah, right?
TV producer.
Yeah.
I used to watch XDA TV videos.
Yeah.
He produced those.
Yeah,
was him?
yeah.
Oh.
Whoa.
Isn't that insane? Anyway, that was a quick aside. More Stephanie quotes.
I don't know, for like somebody who's an engineer, I hate whenever I have a product that like there's a bug in it and I can't fix it. I wish like I can help you with this. Please let me. But I understand why the world doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But maybe it could be better if it did. At the time, everything was really new, so things performed really poorly, to say the least. Right? There was a lot of things that you could do to increase the performance. So, I knew a lot about that from like working on like data center systems and stuff like that, and like really like tuning Linux and all that. So, I just really kind of dug in there and tried to make something that went faster and felt like a nicer thing to use.
You could just make it better.
Yeah, you just make it better.
You just
just
do
make
like-
it better.
It's like this.
But just like make it
Yeah,
this.
yeah, right. So especially if you're an engineer and you're just like using these products and they just have all these issues and it's like you just want to be able to do that, but that company doesn't let you mess with it. That's frustrating. So then you get Android and it's like it's amazing. You can just make your device better. You can just do whatever you want to it. So Jesus Freak and Cyanogen are kind of working on their own stuff. CyanogenMod was a fork of the JF ROM, and then JF ROM was its own little thing. And then on August 20th of 2009, Jesus Freak decides it's a little too much work. He just kind of calls it quits. He's like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I'm kind of bored. But he does do one last thing on his way out. He recommends that everyone using his ROM, which remember was the most popular ROM for the G1 on XDA developers, move over to CyanogenMod.
I remember that. Yeah.
I was going to say, you mentioned drama before, and I assumed the drama was going to stem from one mod coming so much off of one that already was there. Okay.
No.
So it's the opposite.
It's kind of the opposite.
They're friendly.
They're friends.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they're friends. So from here, CyanogenMod just starts growing super fast. Stephanie publishes the whole thing to GitHub so other people can add to it and mess with it, right? Because usually it's just one person updating it and you download that, but then she puts it on GitHub so then people can they can fork it, they can add things to the core build, and everyone just starts like kind of jumping on this unofficial team. And I'm responsible for this feature and maintaining this phone, and you're responsible for maintaining this phone. And it was kind of cool because there would just be new phones that come out. You're one of the first people to buy it. You're like, oh, I really want to get CyanogenMod on this. Oh, it's not available yet. I'm going to be the person on XDA that maintains CyanogenMod for this device.
Yeah.
And it was just, no one's getting paid. Heroes. Unsung heroes.
Absolutely the heroes of my college career.
Exactly.
I love those people.
Yeah. So this is going. The community's thriving. Everything's great. I just remember loving the ROMming community so much because everyone was so friendly. You could just flash all these different ROMs, and it was amazing. But then in 2009, there was this event that happened that the media dubbed Cyanogate. And basically, Cyanogen got a cease and desist letter from Google, which is scary. And Stephanie starts freaking out, right? She's like, damn, this could be the end. I'm scared. Like, maybe I should shut this down. Like, imagine you and a bunch of friends are just kind of like doing this fun project for no reason, and then some company comes out of the gate and sends you a cease and desist letter.
Yeah, like if you had a website called League of Legos and then just like
Yeah.
a company just, yeah.
I, on the other hand, never did anything with the website, but CyanogenMod was a real thing. But basically the problem and the reason that Google sent them the cease and desist letter was that they were distributing Google apps, specifically the Android market. And this one thing happened where CyanogenMod had distributed a newer version of Android Market, version 1.6, before Google even publicly released it.
Do you know how that happened? Or?
Because it gets put in AOSP, but Google had not put it like on a device yet, and so they were really upset about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's understandable.
Can I hop in here?
Yeah.
Boys. It's important to note that at this point in history, there's a very, very, very murky line between AOSP, like the Android open source project, and then Google Apps.
Right.
At this point, like Google Apps are getting shipped on every version of the open source Android project.
Yeah.
But whether or not Google Apps are open source themselves is not clear.
It was defined. I remember that moment.
It was very unclear. And so basically this lawyer just comes and is like, hey, it's against our terms of service to ship our apps, right? Because AOSP is open source and you can ship to AOSP, but you can't be shipping Google apps. Very
YouTube,
murky.
Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Play Store, Apple or App Store. Sorry,
Android Marketplace.
Android Marketplace at the time.
Android Market.
Sorry.
Yeah. So Stephanie ended up working with Google on this. They did talk it through. It ended up not being as scary as she thought it was going to be. Like she thought that was the end. They were going to shut her down, but it kind of was just a like, stop like distributing our apps, but like we're not going to stop you from making your ROM. Like keep doing your thing. So it's at that point in time where every time you ROMmed something or you flashed a ROM, you had to both install the ROM and you had to sideload something called the GApps, which is the Google Apps package.
Yep.
Yeah. So you would flash this ROM onto your phone, but you didn't have any Google Play services or any Google apps, so it was kind of useless. So you had to force the Google apps onto your phone so that you could have Google Play services, you could use Gmail and Google Maps and all of this different stuff.
Okay.
So many memories.
Yeah, it was a whole process. Like it got a little bit harder to ROM your phone. It just took longer.
It was just 2 flashes instead of 1.
It was 2 flashes instead of 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a big deal. So luckily, Google kind of left CyanogenMod alone after that. They hadn't gone after any of the other ROM developers, but CyanogenMod at that point was the biggest, so they kind of just made an example out of them. And Stephanie says like it was probably just like one lawyer that just got a little trigger happy, just needed something to do.
I mean, like my heart definitely sank whenever I got it. Why are they coming after us? Like, this is like a we're helping them. People from the community are like, submitting all this code back to Google, and we are like, we're creating features that they're like copying and including in in Android later on and stuff.
That was what struck me the most, because I remember there would be features that you'd see in CyanogenMod or some random mod, and then 1.5 versions later, that would show up in Android, whether it was lock screen shortcuts or little settings tweaks or something. I would see that. I'm very confident I made a video about how that kept happening, about how these modifications of Android just kept getting swallowed into what Google would ship.
Yeah,
AOSP
it's kind of like Sherlocking, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're just gonna take your ideas because all the smartest people don't work for us.
Yeah,
we're just gonna.
But we don't have to do the bleeding edge like modifications ourselves. We can just see what catches on.
Yeah.
And then once one of them catches on well enough, then we're like, all right, it seems like people really like this. We'll add it.
There's kind of a lot, but they work through it. They keep moving on with CyanogenMod. Kind of out of nowhere, Stephanie lost her job, which was kind of rough for her. But she ended up moving to Seattle because she got a call from no one other than Jesus Freak. Jesus Freak was working for Samsung at the time, and a couple of other people that had been ROMming on XDA.
Interesting.
And he's like, hey, we're doing this work for Samsung. They kind of have us in this like innovation zone. And this was like the peak point of the Samsung versus iPhone kind of fight, when it was like the Samsung phones were really the flagship Android phones, right? Yeah. So Samsung was like, we need to like work up our war chest against Apple. We have to come up with as many features as possible so that people really want to use Samsung phones. So they basically just recruited a bunch of the modders from the XDA forums.
That's not a bad idea.
Which is a pretty smart thing to do.
Super smart.
Yeah, and I think that this is actually one of the reasons why Samsung's OS has like a zillion features that you never really use, right? There are videos all over the internet of like all of the things that One UI has that you had no idea you could do that's built into One UI. And I think a lot of those are a result of these XDA
just
people
grabbing tons of people to come in and work for them for anything that'll stick.
Yeah. Just make anything that'll stick. It was really awesome. A year into this, Stephanie is still working on CyanogenMod in her free time. I still have no idea how she managed to like work full time for Samsung and do CyanogenMod every night and put out nightlies every night.
I guess I'm also surprised Samsung's letting her do that, right? Like if I were Samsung, I would be like, I want all of your best stuff right here under our...
We asked her about that and she said that it was just kind of a like, we don't talk about it kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, which is cool.
That's the coolest Samsung's ever sounded.
I know.
Wow.
Well, this was like back in like Galaxy S3 days, you know? Yeah. So she's working for Samsung and she's running CyanogenMod at the same time. But she gets this call from this man named Carl Pei out of nowhere.
Never heard of him.
And she also gets a call from a man named Kurt McMaster. So you guys probably know Carl Pei. Yeah. He's somehow still in the vernacular of the tech scene because he runs a company called Nothing.
That man stays relevant.
He stays relevant, yeah. At the time, he was this upper manager guy for Oppo. And he calls up Stephanie and he's like, what do you think about making a phone that has CyanogenMod as the OS? Yeah. And I think that he was just like, this would be really like a community-focused thing. Phone, could be really cool. Like we could make a Cyanogen phone. She'd actually been wanting to make a Cyanogen first phone specifically because you would look at the iPhone and you see that it's this full stack phone, right? Apple is making the OS and the hardware. And you really want to be able to build things into hardware. And Stephanie had been frustrated that she couldn't build CyanogenMod through the hardware. She didn't have control of that. She only had control of the software. And it was like on all of these phones, and you could only do so much with like third-party hardware, right? So they start with this conversation, and they start to work together, and they end up making a limited edition phone that is running CyanogenMod for the Chinese market. What was the name of that phone?
How much do you guys want to wager?
10 points.
And remember, this is Carl Pei, who was working at Oppo at the time, if that gives you a little heads up.
And also remember, this phone had a non-cyanogen version, too.
Yeah.
They just also managed
They wanted to make a special edition.
Yeah.
I reviewed this phone, so I should be more confident about this.
You did.
Andrew, how much are you wagering?
5.
I'm like half sure.
Yeah.
I'm half sure.
Well, the thing I'm half sure about, I'm also half sure if that's the correct thing. And then I also think there might be something other than this.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I think I know what you wrote based on that.
Okay, I want to hear. Yeah, we both have it written down. What do you think I wrote?
I think you wrote Oppo Find 1.
No.
Okay.
I wrote OnePlus X.
Oh.
Wrong.
Nope.
I wrote Oppo N1.
Correct.
Okay. I thought like maybe it makes more sense that it was an Oppo phone because
OnePlus was not yet a thing.
That's
yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure we will get into that.
We will get into that later.
Forks.
Yeah. So at the exact same time as this, she gets a call from this man named Kirk McMaster, and there's this quote from Stephanie that's like, this thing happens in my life where like a lot of stuff just happens at the exact same time. She had Carl calling her up asking to make a phone, and she gets a call from this guy named Kurt. Now, Kurt is an interesting character. You know how Mariah is always making that joke that she's a 10x fintech founder and CEO? Oh, no. Yeah.
I just hope when anyone talks about me in the future, they don't say, so this Andrew guy was an interesting character. It
I
just
like that intro.
It does not sound like it's red flag startup right there.
I kind of like it.
He was a quirky fella.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
He's definitely a quirky fella. Huh. Kurt did have a few big hits for all of the companies that he was founding on a yearly basis. He actually was the co-founder of Boost Mobile, which Ellis still uses for some reason.
Let's go, baby! Where are my Boost customers at? I'll see you on the streets.
It's a pay-as-you-go phone service that was actually pretty successful for him. He did some work for Sony. He founded a water bottle company called Core Water. He led digital distribution for Zedge, that ringtone and wallpaper app from decades ago. He did work for Sega. He founded a mobile game studio. He founded a multi-platform transmedia consumer experience, whatever the heck that means. His list of companies is really long.
Serial founder.
Very long serial founder. Anyway, the story behind him contacting Stephanie goes, he had just bought a Galaxy S3, which, by the way, freaking amazing phone. The S3 was like
not good enough for Kurt, apparently.
Nice little OLED screen.
Oh, it was so good. I pre-ordered that phone. I was so excited about it. But he bought a Galaxy S3, and he thought it was the first Android phone that could really come close to competing with the iPhone, right? Because it was so good. It had so many good specs. It seemed cool. But he got it, and he was really annoyed because it didn't have the latest Android version on it. So the latest Android version at the time was Jelly Bean, but it had the one right before it. And specifically, Samsung used to take forever to push major Android updates.
This is a big TouchWiz fault.
Also, Samsung had this UX called TouchWiz.
Yeah.
For those that don't know what TouchWiz is, it was Samsung's UX at the time for their smartphones, and it was really bad.
You can tell how bad it was by the fact that it was named TouchWiz.
Yeah.
Just think about how bad it must be for people to call it TouchWiz with a straight face.
What does that even mean? Yeah, now they literally rebranded it to One UI because TouchWiz has so much bad blood.
Yeah.
Do you remember the default TouchWiz wallpaper being
the
like
water?
Or that was one of them. I was thinking about the one that was like a cloudy sky.
Oh, yeah.
But then they'd have the giant weather widget, which was a different picture of a sky. So there's two separate pictures of a sky overlaid on top.
HTC did that first. HTC annoyingly pioneered the big weather widget in the middle.
That, dude. I loved that. I love the big HTC weather widget. Anyway, so he gets his phone. He's like, this doesn't have the most recent version of Android. This is dumb. Like, why is Samsung taking so long? So he finds out about ROMming, and he goes and he downloads CyanogenMod for his Galaxy S3. And it already had Jelly Bean on it. It was more stock Android than TouchWiz was. It was just better in pretty much every perceivable way. And he's immediately obsessed with it. Being a 10x fintech founder and CEO, he calls Stephanie pretty much. The story goes that he calls Stephanie that night, the night that he flashed it on his phone. He found her on LinkedIn, called her up, and says, I'll get the money and be CEO, you be CTO. So he saw an opportunity. Wow. He was like, this is really good. Most Android ROMs are really bad, or most Android UXs are really bad. We can make make a religion out of this.
It's like a mini Elon story.
Yeah.
Elon was like, Twitter seems nice. How about I buy it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but
ironically, if you think about it, this is not that different from the story of Android, right? When they originally pitched Android, they were going around trying to sell this open OS to a bunch of handset manufacturers.
Yeah.
Now they're like, Android kind of sucks, and everyone's like versions of Android suck. So what if we just made a good one and we give it to everybody to use as a basis? You know, that was kind of their pitch. So Stephanie seemed pretty into the idea because she wanted to make her own device. Carl Pei had just called about potentially making a new company that was based around her device, which is also cool. And he was like, I'm a hardware guy. Oppo is a hardware company. We can make a new company that can be really good hardware and really good software. And Kurt had just showed up, and it seemed like the perfect kind of meshing of like, I'm an engineer. I don't want to deal with any of the business stuff, but I do want to make my own phone. Everyone else can kind of like do that stuff for me. Very quickly after that, CyanogenMod kind of gets turned into Cyanogen Inc. And CyanogenMod still existed, right? Because there was a lot of weird bad blood that was happening because the community was contributing to CyanogenMod, right? It wasn't just Stephanie that was updating it. It was all these people that were adding to CyanogenMod. And suddenly they're like, wait, you're making a corporation out of the work that we put into this ROM.
Yeah, you're the one making money potentially off of all the stuff that we've done at this point.
Yeah. It wasn't great. But Kurt's big talent was raising money and tons of money. And so he starts going around asking for venture funding, not dissimilar to Android. And the funny thing about this is they started getting funding from pretty much everyone that had a vested interest in making Google control Android less, right? Because they didn't want Google to have so much power over this thing that seemed to be one of the major like OSs in the ecosystem.
Which is like one of the things that they developed that for because they didn't want Microsoft to have all of it.
Exactly, dude.
Crazy how history does this thing where like it happens again.
It just does the same thing over and over again. Yeah, it just repeats. So yeah, Microsoft invests, Qualcomm invests. There's a bunch of these big companies that
Microsoft invests. That's funny.
Isn't that ironic?
That's incredible.
Yeah. So there's this kind of legion of like anti-Google Android companies that are like, we want to take away Google's sheer power on this open operating system, which kind of makes sense if you're one of these other companies. So Stephanie made it clear that she was still going to be offering CyanogenMod for free to any like CyanogenMod, right? There was going to be a difference between CyanogenMod and Cyanogen OS. Cyanogen OS was the thing that they would sell to a company that already had the hardware but just wanted to like have good software that they could just ship. You would charge companies for that. And CyanogenMod was like, if you're a regular person and you want to ROM your phone and throw CyanogenMod on your phone, you can do that for free.
And at this point, has she left Samsung to start doing this venture?
She basically left Samsung to do this.
Okay.
Yes.
I was going to say that's a lot of stuff to be doing
you gotta,
on top of...
Sorry, Samsung.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Samsung would be amped about that, but yeah.
Yeah. So they go around and they're raising millions of dollars in funding. And it was kind of convenient, right? Because Carl Pei had already called and said, like, I kind of want to start a company based on this, right? But they wanted to maintain control of Cyanogen. So he's like, I'm going to start this spinoff company of Oppo called OnePlus, right? So he wants to start OnePlus, but he doesn't want to do software. And Stephanie wanted to do hardware, but she only did software. So it was kind of this perfect merging. So they're getting funding and they already have a couple of clients. They've got OnePlus. They're signing deals with this company called Blue out of Florida, and they were interested in having CyanogenMod on there. So the launch was like a pretty huge success. The OnePlus One came out with Cyanogen OS on it, which was like it was a huge launch. It was kind of the original like Poco phone situation.
It was the OG. It was like the enthusiast phone. Because when that thing launched, you only knew about it if you were kind of following along. You were like, oh, okay, they're going to make a phone. This new OnePlus company, they've never made anything before. Like, and they're not in carriers. Like, you have to know about this stuff to see that this phone is launching. It hit pretty hard.
Yeah, it was this community-oriented device. And it was $300, flagship build and specs, and everything about it was pretty amazing.
Oh, Sandstone. I forgot about that. That was that phone.
Yep.
The original OnePlus One was $299, but they also had a higher tiered version of it with more storage. The original version had 16 gigs of storage. They also had one with 64 gigabytes of storage. How much more did they charge for that much more storage?
Is this the closest one?
Yeah.
Sure. Nice. Without going over?
Closest without going over.
Yeah.
What are you wagering?
2 points.
I'll wager 15 points.
15, big baller.
I have very little confidence in that 15 points, but...
I just want everyone to know that Ellis is watching Marquez's 1+1 review right now.
I shot that on Steven's campus. One of the first videos I ever shot on Red.
Oh, wow.
One of the first videos I ever shot outside.
There's Honey Nut Cheerios in the background. What a throwback.
Outside?
Not the A-roll. The
First time I've been
B-roll.
outside.
No. In the A-roll, there's Honey Nut Cheerios.
Yeah, in the A-roll. But I shot the B-roll outside on campus.
Oh.
And I just remember being outside on campus with a Red camera, just like, this is weird. This is weird.
All right, flip them and read. Marquez says $69.
Was the question how many more dollars it was or what the
Yeah.
price was?
How many more dollars?
So the answer is $349.
Oh my! You have to. Come on.
Give him the points.
I gave him the point.
I'm going to give Andrew that.
All right, not for points.
There you go.
When do we think the most recent comment left on this 9-year-old video was?
Dude, it could be yesterday.
3 hours ago.
It could be
3 hours ago?
12 hours ago.
12 hours ago?
15 hours ago.
It was 1 hour ago. And it says 2023. Anyone?
Nice.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So at the time, it just had like insane specs, insane price, really good hardware, really good build. Everything about it seemed amazing.
They don't make them like that anymore, man.
No, they don't. Yeah. I would say the Pixel 7 is like, or the Pixel 8 is like the closest thing you can get. Like,
Yeah, maybe.
but it's still not like fastest chipset. Like it's a little different.
It doesn't have sandstone.
Yeah, it doesn't have sandstone. It won't rip the inside of my pants. So
And scuff endlessly until the end of time.
yeah, and
You
scuff
should say, I
endlessly.
still have the original sandstone one that I had.
It looks
That thing looks
awful.
awful. It looks so bad. It
Really?
definitely got the worst end of the wear and tear.
So things were going really well for OnePlus, right? It was kind of this random company that was like the spinoff of Oppo, which no one in the US or any other country had really heard of unless you're in China. And it seemed like maybe this could work. It's just that like building a phone from like some different OS had never really worked before in the United States. The only other place that this had worked is Xiaomi and Trivia Quest. Well, I just gave the answer away.
Xiaomi.
It's China. It's China.
All of my points.
I don't know if you guys know this, but Xiaomi, the brand, originally started as a custom ROM.
Oh.
It got really popular, and eventually they just thought we should build our own hardware. So they started building their own hardware, and then that was really popular. And so they just kept making devices, and then they just started branching out, and now they're one of like the biggest companies in China.
So Xiaomi and OnePlus kind of started this with the same similar ethos.
Similar, however, OnePlus was sort of like an Oppo thing, sub-brand sort of.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so Oppo already had all like the hardware stuff, whereas Xiaomi was started by people who worked at like Google and a few other big tech companies, but in China. And they were like making their own ROM and then just decided they wanted to make their own hardware for the ROM.
Was it they made a ROM and it had a huge following, or just like
it had a huge following in China.
In China, okay.
Yeah. So pretty cool. And they thought that maybe they could make OnePlus thought that maybe they could make that happen too with CyanogenMod. It could be like this beautiful pairing where everything that grows from OnePlus and CyanogenMod are like together, and they become this huge company, right? But this is where things start to get a little bit shaky. So investors were starting to pressure Kurt and Cyanogen Inc. to actually generate any revenue at all. And they didn't really have a clear path to generating revenue. There's kind of this thing that happens in Silicon Valley where you pitch your idea, but you have no idea how you're going to make money. And then VCs are just like, acquire as many users as you can, get as many users as you can, like get more people on your thing, and we'll figure out the money later. And they don't ever figure out the monetization strategy.
I guess, so when they joined with OnePlus, it was just like, we were kind of helping each other out here, so there wasn't big money in there. I'm
there
sure
was
there was
probably not a lot of big money because it was kind of like a launch partner thing for them. It was like one of the original things, but their main monetization strategy is we're going to charge companies to be the OS for this device. So they were charging OnePlus, but OnePlus was also
not enough for investors.
Not enough for investors, right? They wanted to scale this like as fast as possible.
Classic.
The investors didn't really know what the main selling point of Cyanogen OS was going to be. Like, it was cool, and they were being very brazen, like trying to start this thing that Google owned, but it was sort of an anti-Google thing because you're sort of starting it in Google's, like in Android's own ashes. Yeah. And it's just weird. And they wanted to remove market dominance from Google while being a sub-product of a Google product. It just seemed strange.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be worried about that at any time, where if your entire product is based off of something and then you breach into that something space a little too much, are you worried about losing?
I think the only reason that a lot of these investors felt okay giving them money and not worrying that Google was just going to like shut them down at any minute was that Google would probably get in some weird antitrust territory if they were like, this is open source, and then they like shut down a thing that starts competing with them, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why they felt okay with doing it. But they just wanted to acquire as many users, which was a problem. Then bigger business problems started to emerge. OnePlus had planned to sell the OnePlus One in a lot of countries, including India. And if you know OnePlus, one of their primary markets is India. But Kurt had sold exclusivity rights for Cyanogen OS to this company called Micromax in India, which means that only Micromax phones with CyanogenMod could be sold in India.
Whoops.
Apparently he did not communicate that to Carl, and so it just got really dicey really quickly. Really quick trivia question. What was the brand of phones in India that was under the Micromax brand? It was a sub-brand of Micromax that ran Cyanogen. And these are the most numerous devices that have run Cyanogen OS.
Think Soldier Boy.
How much do you guys want to wager?
How many points do I have?
Marquez has 54. Andrew with 1, 2. Carry the one.
Careful, Andrew. Careful, Adam. There was a Reddit post saying, "Anyone think that Adam's joke about Andrew's score is getting a little?"
I disagree with them. And then somebody was just like, "Andrew needs to pick it up," and the original poster was like, "Yeah, he does." So we're good. We're good.
Oh my god!
Listen, I only got one joke. All right, let me have it.
Yeah. I think I'm entirely too confident about this when I'm.
Oh my god!
All in. Yes. Marquez, do you plan to counter?
1 point.
Oh, what?
I don't know the answer. I just straight up don't know it. I can't lose points here.
Right.
I don't know the answer.
Marquez says Vivo.
I wrote Alcatel.
Adam, say it with me on 3. 1, 2, 3. You.
It's just
I thought the Soldier
Why
phone
you?
was a white label Alcatel phone, so that's why I went with
Alcatel
that.
is a thing, though.
It is. This is U Ventures.
Anyway, this gets really dicey really fast. It starts to be this like all-out public dispute that you can watch in real time happening on the internet between Carl Pei and Kurt McMaster, and it was kind of beautiful to play out. Carl publishes this letter on the OnePlus forums that's just like, I'm paraphrasing this because it's a bit long, but he says, "This week we announced the OnePlus One will finally launch in India. On October 7th, Cyanogen released an update to comply with Indian regulations," which means that the phone would be able to, the OnePlus One was actually going to be able to work on Indian carrier markets, right? Therefore, it was surprising and disappointing to hear from Cyanogen on November 26th, which was a month and a half later, that they had granted exclusive rights in India over the Cyanogen system to another company. So they update the OnePlus One to be able to work in India, and then the next month they're like, "You can't sell this in India." Woof. Woof.
Yeah.
Big woof energy. And Carl Pei was just very like, what is going on? So they start this like back and forth where they're making all these public statements at each other about how the other company is trying to screw them, and they're each built on the back of each other's backs. The back of your back is also my back, that kind of thing. But Carl does say he attributes a lot of OnePlus's success to Cyanogen, which is probably true.
Yeah.
Because, at the time it was like, there are a lot of like tiny phone brands that could launch that have kind of no name. Like Carl was kind of a no name. He was like an upper manager at Oppo, but that's kind of it. And the only reason that the OnePlus One became such a big hit was because it got all the press from having CyanogenMod on it.
It's funny because like Carl Pei built a phone based on the hype of a community.
Yeah.
Then the brands that he created had the hype of a community that he then built a new phone off of.
Yes.
What
Carl Pei is the original hype man.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of open letters from the community that are just not too kind to Kurt about this, right? Because imagine you buy a OnePlus One to use in India, and then they're just like, "Oh, you can't do this anymore. You can't use this in India anymore."
Easy for them to pick sides.
Yeah, it was a problem. At the last minute, because they could not use Cyanogen OS, they had to build another OS, which was called Oxygen OS. So OnePlus had to spin up this new OS because it couldn't use Cyanogen OS. It ended up being one of the most popular OSs in the Android world for a very long time. And it was actually not that different from Cyanogen OS. It was very stock Android, very clean, very fast, and that was
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Well, now it's ColorOS again.
Yeah.
Well, they made it ColorOS and then they renamed it back to Oxygen just because people thought they were different, even though they're exactly the same. Yeah, it's all naming conventions and stuff. But things just got worse from there. Every time Cyanogen Inc. seemed to land some big deal, things just kind of stopped working. And there's even this crazy thing that Stephanie says that not a lot of people know about that ended up probably being the death blow for the company.
We were working on a project with a large U.S. carrier partner and a large manufacturer in China. And it was going to be the mod phone, right? We hired industrial designers. The manufacturer built the first versions of it. It had this really cool industrial design, and we were bringing all these features to it. It was going to ship on a major carrier. We had all the stuff in place, and the worst thing happened. The manufacturer got hit with a trade embargo from the FTC. And that basically killed the whole project.
Can you imagine what would have happened if a Cyanogen branded phone got launched on a major US carrier?
That would have been a very different path.
Yeah.
For the history of Android.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very different, right?
Yeah.
And you can kind of speculate on who that major OEM might have been that got hit from this fine from the FTC. We think we kind of deduced that was probably ZTE because at the time they got hit with this major fine, something to do with giving a ton of money to Iran.
Okay.
Lots of US geopolitics going on in here.
Nice.
But it sucks, right? It's like Cyanogen is just trying to make their phone.
Yeah.
So if you remember, ZTE had launched this phone called the ZTE Axon M that was an AT&T exclusive.
Might have had that phone.
It was one of the first like dual screen phones.
Oh.
That like it had a screen on each side and it would open up, but it was just two separate screens. It wasn't like it wasn't a foldable screen.
Oh, so like the Surface.
Sort of like the Surface, but it didn't close in on itself. It's like the outsides were screens and it would open like this and it was just like flat on the back.
So it's a worse Surface.
An even worse Surface. Anyway, AT&T at the time like was more open to launching more experimental devices like this.
What, real quick, year-wise, what time period are we talking about now?
Early 2016 through mid 2016. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, they got hit with this trade embargo. They couldn't do it. And Stephanie has this quote that was like,
but that was ultimately like the downfall. That's what like broke my soul. You know, after like we put so much effort into it, you know, we had marketing, we had the device, like it was built, right? Like it exists.
Which is rough because they'd been going out trying to do their original thing of like selling the OS to everybody, and that wasn't working out. And Stephanie had been wanting to build her own hardware for so long. Finally, they're like, we have to make money somehow. Okay, let's build the phone. They build the phone. They have everything ready. It's ready to go. And then ZTE messes everything up.
Allegedly ZTE.
Allegedly ZTE.
Just in case.
Allegedly ZTE. So things start getting really bad. They're not making any money. Investors are getting upset. They have a big first round of layoffs in July. Then Kirk McMaster steps down as CEO.
How many people were working for them at that point?
I don't have an exact answer, but at this point in time, they had raised almost $100 million in total, and they had two offices, one in Seattle and one in Palo Alto. They were like, it was a flush organization.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So Kirk McMaster steps down as CEO, and he sends this email announcing the first pivot of the company to a modular OS. Like they were going to try to license off little bits of the OS to people that needed it.
Okay.
Which seems strange. I think he thought that like if someone wants the Cyanogen camera, then we can sort of give them that.
Selling it for parts. Always
a great. Always the death rattle of a tech company. It's like, well, what about the parts for other things?
Yeah. So they tried to make that work, but no. The next month, the Seattle office closes. Next month, Stephanie officially leaves after she gets removed from the board because she's having fights with Kurt. She's having fights with the rest of the board. It's not great. And later that month in December, the final build of Cyanogen OS is released. And then on December 24th, a blog post comes out called A Fork in the Road. This blog post was basically announcing the end and saying goodbye, saying that CyanogenMod as well could not go on because the brand was too destroyed at that point, and also because like other people now owned the Cyanogen brand. Like they couldn't even do anything with it, which is so depressing. But the blog post said, CyanogenMod has served the community well over its 8 long years. It's been our home, bringing together their friends from all over the world to celebrate our joy of building and giving. It's apt then that on this eve of a holiday, we pay our respects, we take pride in our lineage, and we move forward and continue to build on its legacy. So Cyanogen was dead, and with it, the ROMming community. Was the ROMming community dead? This beautiful combination of people who are all bashing together and making something beautiful, was this the fall of the Android ROM?
It's okay, I have the answer. Maybe. And we'll find out
after the break. Welcome back. So remember that goodbye blog post called A Fork in the Road?
I read it with a tear in my eye.
Yeah. I remember reading it in my college dorm.
Same. No, I was out of college, though. It was a little later.
No, you're right.
But I might have still been in that dorm.
It wasn't my college dorm.
No, I was in that apartment for like 2 more years.
He like
so.
broke back into it just to remember the modern days.
It wasn't the dorm, sorry. It was my college apartment. My bad.
Anyway, the blog post is called A Fork in the Road, but do you guys, trivia question, know what it means to fork software?
How much are you willing to wager? Andrew?
This is one.
Oh, one. Okay.
If that.
Everything all in.
I feel
I have like
Marquez.
I feel like this is going to be
general-
embarrassing if we get it wrong because we've been talking about it the entire episode.
I don't know. I don't want to put too many. I'll do like 5. I don't know. I have a general concept of what I think it means. But
With 53 points, you're going to bet 5.
Sorry, I'll bet 3. I have to write it?
Andrew said...
I just wrote branch off from.
Correct.
Okay.
And I drew a branch.
Correct.
No, that's just a Y.
It's a fork.
It's like a tuning
If I
fork.
drew it in the middle, it would be too complicated for this analogy. So
Okay, So, yeah. A fork in the road. To fork
You know
software...
that music video of See You Again?
No.
You know what I'm talking about?
By who?
See You Again.
All about it when I see you again.
Oh, that song.
You remember the end of the music video?
No.
Where
No.
Paul Walker drives down one way
Oh, yes.
and Vin
You
Diesel
remember
drives the other way.
Wait, are they really
There's
in
a
the
fork
music video?
road, yeah, and they just drive away.
That's hilarious. Damn.
That's Cyanogen.
Dang. Wow. It's called the blog post is called A Fork in the Road. And in software, it basically means that you have one line of software and you fork the software. So this one keeps being developed for this use, and this one starts being developed in this direction. And you can eventually end up with very different looking software that started from the same original base.
Oh, I disagree with Marquez's model. His
wanted
went
mine to
2
be
different
I
directions
feel
instead
you.
of straight.
Well, that's why
minus 3.
What I drew before. Did you see what I drew before?
Mine is branched off from, which is like a branch on a tree. Which
I wish
is
I could
exactly
rewind what I
correct.
drew before. I had
Andrew
a
is more
circle,
correct,
an
for
empty circle, and then I had a circle with a dot in it to show that it was the same on one side.
I don't want to
different on the other
derail
side.
anymore, so I'll let you keep your 3 points.
I
But
was
I
right.
think I was more right.
I got it.
Okay.
I got it.
So anyway, yes, the blog post called A Fork in the Road was kind of a little hint, right? Cyanogen might have been dead and they might have been saying goodbye, but reading the blog post again, you start to look a little deeper.
It's like Da Vinci Code.
A little through a
ROM community?
through a hyperlink. Yes, it says CyanogenMod has served the community well over its 8 years. It's been our home, bringing together friends from all over the world to celebrate our joy of building and giving. It's apt then that on this eve of a holiday we pay our respects. We take pride in our hyperlinked lineage as we move forward and continue to build on this legacy. And what happens when you click the lineage hyperlink?
Boom. A fork appears. Lineage OS.
Thought you meant like a real,
Like an
fork.
actual fork. An image of a fork appears.
Yes.
So the first blog post was December 24th, 2016, so Christmas Eve. And
wow.
it was that was our blog post saying this is us, like it's the same people.
This is some of the core team behind Lineage OS. You'll probably learn more about them in a sec. But effectively what happened is a number of people who had been working on CyanogenMod and Cyanogen Inc. were like, we're not going to just let this die, right? CyanogenMod was an open sourced thing. It's very different from when like a company goes under and all the IP that they had just gets destroyed. Cyanogen, the name, CyanogenMod, the name, Cyanogen OS, the name was owned by venture capital, but the actual code wasn't.
So all of the code, even developed inside of the like offices under the official corporation, still was open.
The stuff that wasn't open source. So they were developing stuff that were closed source for
Okay.
Cyanogen OS.
Okay.
And then they were developing open source stuff for CyanogenMod. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, they just took CyanogenMod and they basically forked it, changed the name of all the code from Cyanogen to Lineage OS. Right? This is the launch of Lineage OS. So they put out this blog post. It says, you've probably read the news articles today. If you haven't, please see the following. Yes, this is us. Lineage OS will be a continuation of what CyanogenMod was. To quote Andy Rubin, this is the definition of open. A company pulling their support out of an open source project does not mean it has to die. And I find that very beautiful. Yeah. So capitalism and venture capital might have destroyed Cyanogen, the company, but Cyanogen OS lives on. This actually reminds me of a lot of like what happened with boosted boards.
Yeah.
Like if you guys haven't heard the boosted boards episode, it's audio only, but basically the same thing. They got a bunch of venture capital, couldn't make enough money, and then they fell apart, and then they got sold for parts.
A word to the wise.
And a million other companies have fallen victim to this.
Yes. But of course, that was not open sourced, right? If it was an open sourced skateboard, then somebody else could take the open source build of the electric skateboard and make a new company based on it. But all that IP just got sold to Lime and all that stuff. The Cyanogen project just needed to be born into something else. So the code base was all public domain, but the brand could just be restarted by anybody. I seem to remember this being a time when I started to kind of forget about ROMming, though. You know, this was the end of 2016, December 2016. And if you guys remember, the Nexus phones used to be these like awesome, incredible developer-focused devices that Google also sold to regular people. You know, it was like they had a different manufacturer make all these devices.
I can name every single one right now, just in case you're thinking about that being a trivia question.
No.
Okay.
But
wait, I'm curious. Name them all.
You like Nexus phones? Name every single one.
HTC Nexus 1. Then we got Samsung Galaxy Nexus. Then we got LG Nexus 4.
So good.
Then we got, let's see, Nexus
LG
5.
Nexus
LG
5.
Nexus
If any of
5.
these wrong, he loses all
Motorola
his
Nexus
Motorola,
6.
Shamu Nexus 6.
Huawei
and
Nexus 6P.
Nexus 6P, but also Nexus 7 tablet came out as well.
Yes.
That was also LG.
That was way earlier, though.
Oh, sorry.
It was called
I'm just going in number order.
Well, Nexus 7 was called 7 because of the size, not of the
7-inch
number.
tablet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was made by...
Nexus 7 LG is LG.
No.
Nexus 7?
Yeah. Asus.
Oh, right. I had one. Yeah. And then the Nexus 10 was Samsung.
Yeah.
They skipped so many numbers.
Well, those correlated with the size of the screen.
Yeah. That was a 7-inch tablet and a 10-inch tablet.
Yeah, so where's the Nexus 3?
Yeah, there was no Nexus.
That's what I'm saying.
That's true.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah. The
I did not mean
6P
for
and the
us to
5X came out. The 6P and the 5X came out at the same time, with Huawei being the manufacturer of the 6P and the 5X was LG.
Yeah, at the same time.
Anyway.
I prefer the 6P a lot.
The 6P was the last Nexus phone, but Cyanogen died in December of 2016. What was launched in October of 2016?
Marquez, you have 56. Andrew, you have 2. What would you like to wager?
Anything that was launched?
Notice that we just talked a lot about Nexus devices.
29 points.
We just talked a lot about Nexus devices. And I remember I was saying that was kind of around the time that I started forgetting about ROMming. And I wasn't as interested in like flashing ROMs on my phone constantly.
And it was still true that like a lot of features kept getting brought from
ROMs.
those ROMs into like new versions of Android.
Yeah.
It just
But
kept
like,
happening over and over.
why was I forgetting about ROMming? Like they had Nexus devices, and like what happened in October of 2016?
First one, they locked the bootloader.
Andrew, how many points are you willing to wager?
None.
None.
Not even gonna guess.
Is this the first one they locked the bootloader?
No,
Oh, okay. Well, I wrote Pixel 1.
that's true. Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, Pixel
But
1.
did it
I
take to
did
like
write
Pixel 3 to lock the bootloader?
I actually don't know. They might have locked it in Pixel 1.
No. All right.
Yeah. But it was kind of this, it was kind of like this interesting timing where Cyanogen, the company, goes under. CyanogenMod has to change. Everyone's kind of losing interest in ROMming and then the Pixel comes out, right? This was kind of like, the Pixel was a little bit less open than all of the other Nexus devices that were made for developers. Like, it was still easy to ROM. Google was still committing to Android getting really good, but they were committing more to Android getting really good than before. They wanted to make the Android iPhone, right? They realized we can actually do this. We want to make a device that can become the bastion of what Android could possibly become. And so it had been a while since Android wasn't very good. And over those 8 years since the first Android phone, Google had really built it out.
But I think Android was also just more of kind of an open book at that point. stuff was changing a lot. There were more devices that you could actually flash ROMs on. Now that now more manufacturers had them locked down.
And Android just became a more mature operating system over time, right?
Yep.
And it just, back when it was less mature, it was a lot more fun and interesting to ROM to kind of mess around with flashing ROMs because there was kind of more stuff to do. There were a lot of features that you could add. Different manufacturers' operating systems were not very good. It was just like, it was in your best interest to be ROMming. So this kind of left me wondering, like, okay, so if Android was good now, like, what's the point in something like Lineage OS? Like, were there any people still ROMming? Like, it seemed like it's cool that you picked up the pieces of CyanogenMod.
Yeah.
But there's got to be way less people actually using it, right?
So.
It's got to be way less. But what I was told by the Lineage people actually really surprised me. You would assume that the community had kind of died and they were barely holding on. But how many devices are currently running Lineage OS? A, 500,000. B, 1.5 million. C, 3 million. And D, 5 million.
All in.
All in. Marquez.
Do it. I'm going to.
9 points.
Oh my goodness. I'm betting
9 points, and Andrew's
one.
betting
Carry
2.
the one.
Do you have any points, Andrew?
Hey,
you have one?
He's got 2.
I have 2.
2? Okay.
Flip him and read.
They both put D.
D.
No.
Oh.
1.5 million is the answer. But
we were optimistic.
But 1.5 million is still a lot. And
it is.
I think that there was a lot of people talking about ROMming back in the day because phones were so bad because they didn't have as many features. They needed to run faster, needed to add things to it. And people were just like more willing to be experimental with their devices because they were so bad. Whereas now it's like most of the stuff the phones do very well, you know? You have to go through like quite a lot of effort to ROM your phone.
Are you going to get that much out of it?
What are you going to get out of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to double the speed. It's not going to make the camera significantly better. And there's like a lot of things you can do as well. You can sideload things. Like you don't really need to flash a whole ROM.
Yeah, it feels like modifying a car when stock cars are so good, and you're decreasing your reliability.
Yeah,
at the like benefit of not that much extra stuff.
Yeah. So the people that are flashing ROMs has probably gone down quite a bit. CyanogenMod, as they say, had a much younger, more excited user base that was like flashing those nightlies and just talking about it a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas now, if you think about it, kind of everything is a computer, right? Like those terminals at like McDonald's that order your food run on Android.
What is a computer?
The Quest 3 runs on Android.
Yeah.
The Switch, parts of the Switch run on Android.
Polestar 2.
Yeah. The Polestar 2 has Android Automotive. Yeah, all of this different stuff. Like all of these things run on AOSP, which is Android Open Source Project. So like, you know, if you could just take something that was a better version of Android, say Lineage OS, that had been like significantly updated and had like newer Android features and just it's open source. You could put it on your device. Wouldn't you do that instead of using AOSP?
I kind of want to know how many of the 1.5 million Lineage OS devices are not smartphones. Are there like refrigerators running Lineage OS in like people's basements?
Probably.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I don't think any companies have really come out and said we are using Lineage OS as our like basal stuff.
Yeah.
Most of them, you don't need the latest Google camera app. Like Mishal told us that his printer runs Android. It's got like looked into it. Yeah, it's running like Android 8, but you don't need like a camera and all this like latest stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, well there are still a lot of community members that are maintaining Lineage for individual devices. Like if you go on the Lineage website, most popular phones are on there. And it sort of works the same way as it worked on CyanogenMod, where you buy a new phone, you decide you want it to be the guy that maintains it, you go on and you maintain it. And it's kind of fun. But it's being used a lot in industry now,
okay,
which is very different. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what really happened to the modding community, right? Like people stopped using this. Is it just because Android got mature and things got good, right? Now, you might have heard of this kind of conspiracy theory that's been going around for a while that Google has been taking things from AOSP, and instead of updating AOSP, they just update them in the Google apps, right? And this is sort of a major thing that has been happening for quite a few years now. So yes, Android is open sourced, and if you want to use Android, you can use it, but it's like the camera app's going to be from like Android 8, and this app's going to be from Android 8.
I made a video about this.
Yeah. And they started just like using their own stuff, and like they have Pixel X now, and the Messenger client in AOSP is different from Google Messages, and like everything is like Google this, Google that versus the AOSP versions. So there's kind of this conspiracy theory that Google intentionally, they need to make money off of Android, right? They originally made it open source because they needed to get as much of a user base as possible. But then at one point they were like, how do we monetize this? We can't keep giving away all the good stuff that we're making for free.
Is this like the fourth time this has been brought up? Like somebody's like, I gotta make some money off this. I really want to
do it. Yeah. So I asked a lot of people, right? I asked Mashal, I asked the Lineage guys, like, I was kind of like trying to ask them, like, do you think this is the main reason that ROMming has like gotten so not popular? You know, that Google's like taking AOSP and making it a lot harder to like build stuff off of. And they actually think that it makes a lot of sense for Google to be doing this because the biggest reason that they say is that our phones are now a much more major part of the way that we live our lives, right? And back in the day, you could ROM your phone, you could do whatever you wanted, and like you would still go to your bank maybe, and there would be a banking app, but the banking app was really bad. It was very new. And as our phones kind of get more mature and have become a more integral parts of our lives, there have been people at those banking companies that are like, whoa. This person is throwing an OS that we have no idea what it is, and the security features, we have no idea what it is, and they're using our banking app on some phone. And so a big reason that both the Lineage OS people and people like Mashal think that ROMming is like getting a lot harder and people are not doing it as much is because now Google has made it that if you use a custom ROM on your phone, things like banking apps don't work, right? And imagine your banking app doesn't work. Like that's a major reason not to ROM your phone. You can't use a lot of the core features that you would want to use on your device.
Yeah, it's not worth it
anymore. Yeah, it's not worth it anymore. Because like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna get you're gonna unlock your Snapdragon processor and get faster performance. Like, what does that even mean?
I don't have my flashlight.
But like early on, when we're talking about like ROMming phones and doing it all the time and resetting it, and like just so little of your life was on it back then. Like it was a device that was an accessory. Your phone is everything about you at this point. There are so many insanely important things, and if something were to mess up on your phone, you could be really screwed for a while. So like it's way scarier to also just like do things to your phone now.
Yeah. So security is like very important. You know, there's security patches and bug fixes all the time. Just all the time, as like it's a rat race. As soon as there's this bug that people find out about, they got to patch it, and then people exploit it and patch it and exploit it, and it's the whole thing. Random trivia question: there is a fast food app that does not work if you mod your phone.
Which one?
All of
Which
my
fast
points.
food app?
Oh God,
doesn't
Andrew,
work.
You're wagering all of your 0 points.
I don't know why I feel like I have 0 points.
I thought you had 2.
And then he wagered them all last time. We'll give you a credit of 50
100 points.
Whoa.
50 points?
50 point.
I get 50 because Marquez won't wager more than 10 points.
What's Marquez at?
76.
I've gotten a bunch wrong. Okay.
I wager 50 points.
The only thing Andrew's this confident about is Taco Bell, but I don't want to say Taco Bell. So it's a little bit concerning.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said about me.
Remember that there's a prize. Don't you want to win the prize?
Oh, fair. Wow, he got a crit. Well, that's interesting. Well, I'm going to write a fast food app, and I don't think I'm right.
But what are you wagering?
Oh. You said I had what?
76.
6. 6 points.
Wow. Imagine only wagering 6 points.
Andrew could potentially end up owing me 50 points.
What?
If he
What
gets
does that
this
mean?
You can't. What's the question again? Just so I know.
There is a fast food app that does not work if you mod your phone, if you unlock your bootloader. What is that fast food app?
That's a good one.
All right. Oh,
I saw you right. I wrote Wendy's.
No.
I wrote Starbucks.
No. The answer is McDonald's.
Ooh.
Yeah. Mishal says he doesn't really know why this is the case.
I don't know. I'm so sad that I got that wrong.
Yeah.
I have a guess.
I mean, it probably has to do with the money thing, right?
Yeah, it has to do with GPay. Like I have it. Is that what they call it now?
Is
that what the kids are calling it
Google
these days?
Pay.
Google
Pay.
Wallet.
Google Pay. Google
G Wallet.
No.
Wallet Pay.
GChat.
GChat.
Google Pay.
Google Hollow. Yeah, it probably does like a check, and if there's anything wrong with the OS,
Yeah.
it's like not.
It's just funny that it's.
That's only McDonald's that does that.
That was the one that Mishal pointed out in particular. Yeah, it could be other ones
Starbucks
too.
does a lot of the same stuff.
Well,
When
Starbucks
you-
is a
Bank
bank.
stuff. That's
what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
When you wrote that and how many Starbucks gift cards,
Yeah.
that made a lot.
That's how
of sense.
Starbucks makes all their money is by investing your money that you add to your card on the app.
Insane.
It's yes.
They're literally a bank. Yeah.
That's why it's called Starbucks.
Okay. Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Minus 70 points.
Yeah.
That felt horrible to say out loud.
Yeah. So yeah, security is just becoming really important because our devices are kind of like this one-stop shop. They really are PDAs now. And so as security gets more important, all of these apps are like, I don't want this unknown like OS to be running my app, especially when it has things like your financial details on it. Because if they get in trouble, they're going to get in a lot of trouble.
It's risky.
Yeah, so it's getting more closed down, and surprisingly, people like the Lineage OS team and Mishal are like, yeah, that makes sense. We actually totally understand that, right? So it's not as much of the like, Google is intentionally trying to make Android harder to use. They really think that the reason is because of security.
I'm sure they're also like, they don't want to be the one to create something and then that winds up being the reason somebody loses a lot, and then they have to think like, that's kind of our fault.
Yeah.
And like not even legally, but just like that sucks to think like
Yeah.
we did something that a bunch of people lost important things because of.
Yeah. But it is a bummer because like even RCS does not work in AOSP.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. That like the messaging client of AOSP doesn't have RCS support.
That's funny.
You have to use Google Messages, which is crazy. But, you know, the spirit of ROMming is not dead. There's plenty of open source material that's being published consistently. People like Stephanie are a huge open source like people. They like really advocate for it. And I think that even if these ROMs like Lineage OS are not the level of CyanogenMod like they used to be, where the community was like, there were so many people and everyone was super excited about it all the time and flashing every single day. I think every community will always have enough people that want to maintain it, and just for the reason that they want to maintain it, right? They don't have to make a company out of everything. And that's kind of the magic
Wise words.
of open source.
Yes.
You don't have to make a company
Yes.
out of this.
Gotta make money out of it.
You gotta make money out of this.
I just remember, the modding days were fun.
They were.
I had and I still have it, the original Motorola Droid that I had. And that phone, I can't believe it still boots. That phone went through it. And my Galaxy Nexus, I had custom ROMs. I was overclocking those phones.
Yeah.
I had custom kernels where you could choose like, all right, let me get up to 1100 megahertz when the screen is on, but then underclock down to 200 megahertz when the screen is off.
Dang.
And have this refresh rate so that I can like cycle between those clock speeds quickly and end up with a faster phone with longer battery life with all these custom kernels. It was insane.
Yeah.
These phones were cooking in my pocket.
Just trying to get
it's unreal. And I was
crazy
flashing
levels up.
nightlies. I was doing
Yeah.
all that. That was quite a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was the last time you tried to ROM a phone?
I think right around the time that Cyanogen was done.
Yeah.
Like I remember being on the nightlies. I remember doing a lot of Paranoid Android and like because that was like an alt ROM.
Yeah.
Right around when Cyanogen was super.
Alt-ROM.
It was like Cyanogen was the big one.
It's not a phase, Mom.
But there was like Paranoid Android on the side, which is like, oh, that's got these cool themes and a couple extra kernel features for my like overclocking desires. But I definitely wasn't doing it much after like 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
I did it once on my Eris.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
Nice.
Shout out to the Eris, man.
I just think it's like pretty incredible how important CyanogenMod ended up being to like a lot of stuff that happened. You know,
Yeah.
like OnePlus only really exists the way it does because of CyanogenMod.
Yeah, I mean, it was a community-based thing that was also built off a different person that built something and then made it to like it's literally in the history of Android at this point, and like Android phones in general. So
Yeah.
that's wild.
Yeah. So while we might not do a lot of ROMming ourselves anymore, I think it's beautiful that communities will still come together and make open source projects that are really cool.
You want to do one more trivia to
Can I get 50 more
round us
points?
out?
Sure.
I wager everything.
All right.
Can I get, how many points do you have? No, I'll take 50 points. That works.
I think I have 70.
I think that's okay.
Marquez has 70 points.
All right. What famous piece of science fiction media does the name Nexus of the Google phones come from?
We've definitely talked about this before.
I have no idea.
Marquez,
Second you
what
said
was your
famous
wager?
media, I was cooked.
I'll give you a hint. This famous piece of sci-fi media has androids in it.
Star something. Let's go with androids.
These androids may or may not be asleep sometimes. And while they are asleep, they might be doing something. All right, what'd you guys get?
I wrote The Bachelor.
Is it? I'm gonna feel horrible.
Did you put
I'll give you-
Starbucks again?
I'll give you a hint. The book and the movie have different names, and I'll accept either.
Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and
Well,
or
Marquez,
do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Is this wrong?
He put Star Wars.
that is unfortunately
Yes.
wrong.
Do
David
Androids-
is right.
And the movie is Blade Runner.
yes.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yes. Famous media.
Yeah.
In fact,
Wait, he wagered all his points.
Marquez wagered all his points and he
Oh
had
my
70
gosh.
points. So now he has 0.
No.
Andrew had negative 50 and wagered 50.
I did not wager
He has
50.
negative
You didn't
100.
no, but
Carry the one.
the Android from Blade Runner, the model is the Nexus 6.
What? Oh wow.
And
That's hilarious.
and the estate of Philip K. Dick sued Google over it.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Dang.
The prize for the winner is a lovely 3D printed crown that Tim is handing to the winner.
Look at this.
You may hand it to Marquez because he won with 0 points.
3D printed. Over my headphones.
Tim is placing the
Nice.
crown on Marquez.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Little tiara.
All right.
It sucks.
Little spin, I think, on this crown. I think the winner of every trivia moving forward gets this crown. So
I
it
like
just
that.
gets passed around.
I like
This
that.
crown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll write my name on it, and then every subsequent winner should also do the same.
There we go.
Okay. But it was fun kind of like recapping on what happened from the birth of Android up until now and how important the open source community was to all of that.
I mean, as someone who wasn't part of that community and did very little, knew just enough about it to know what CyanogenMod was, and then to know about it as in like inside of OnePlus and stuff.
Yeah.
It's fun to learn.
It was
all
a
of that.
crazy set of years, dude.
Sounds like
It
something
was-
I would have been into, and
I was
guess just
flashing CyanogenMod nightlies every single day, wiping my device every single day. I would lose all of my data, all of my photos every single day for no reason because I was a nerd.
Same. That's you and me both.
Yeah.
Simpler times.
Simpler times. But it was a good era of Android. Yeah. 0 points.
Thought about it.
And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Remember, there's a regularly scheduled episode for Friday, so don't worry about that. See you later.
Peace.
Waveform is produced by Adam Molina and Ellis Robin. We are partnered with the Vox Media Podcast Network, and our intro outro music is by Vane Cell.